Hi there, I'm John Nelson, and I'm a wildlife videographer and Florida Master Naturalist. Today I'm here at the Manatee Observation and Education Center, and it's located in downtown Fort Pierce on the waterfront. As a wildlife videographer, I have the opportunity to film amazing animals all throughout the entire state, but the Florida manatee is perhaps one of the most incredible creatures I've ever come across.
Before we get started talking about manatees, let's give you just a little bit of background information about the Manatee Observation and Education Center. The Main Street Fort Pierce vision for an environmental center was brought to reality through a substantial grant from the Florida Inland Navigation District, support from local citizens, and the business community. In 1996, the Manatee Observation and Education Center opened its doors to the public. Their mission is to promote understanding and responsible actions for the protection of the Treasure Coast's fragile ecosystems and their inhabitants. While the Manatee Center is dedicated to educating visitors about manatees, the innovative exhibits and displays focus not only on the manatee and the marine environment, but offer education about other ecosystems as well. Each year, the Manatee Observation and Education Center educates over 5,000 students with classroom instruction and field activities. On-site programs and special events such as the Lunch Lecture Series, summer camps, Nature Fest, workshops, and eco-boat tours serve a diverse public ranging from children to adults. The continued operation of the Manatee Center is only possible through the generous service of countless dedicated volunteers and the financial support from our community through sponsorships, memberships, donations, grants, and sales in the Vanishing Mermaid gift shop. The Manatee Center is a great place to learn about the Florida manatee, but it wasn't that long ago that we knew almost nothing about these amazing creatures. Throughout history, the unexplained and unexpected have been called by many different names. Early seafarers were quick to create wild and frightening tales of mermaids and other sea creatures when they simply didn't understand what they had witnessed. In 1493, Columbus entered into his logbook the sighting of what he thought was a mermaid. He wrote that the mermaid was not as beautiful as other sailors had led him to believe. What he was really writing about was the first recorded historical account of the West Indian manatee. In the years since manatees were discovered, biologists have been fascinated by these amazing animals. Manatee and dugongs, sometimes called sea cows, belong to the scientific order of Sirenia. Found throughout the world, the order Sirenia includes 4 living and 1 non-living species of manatee and dugongs. The 4 living species include the dugong, living in the coastal waters of East Africa to Australia, the Amazonian manatee, living in and around the Amazon River, the West African manatee, found off the west coast of Africa, and the West Indian manatee. The West Indian manatee is divided into 2 separate subspecies. The Antillean manatee inhabits much of the Caribbean along the coastal and inland waterways of South America and the Greater Antilles. Then there's the Florida manatee. Florida manatees are found in the southeastern United States, with the highest concentrations of these animals found in Florida. The non-living Steller sea cow is found in the North Pacific and grew up to 30 feet long. The Steller sea cow was first described by George Wilhelm Steller in 1741 in the Arctic region of North America. It was the only sea cow known to live in cold waters. Sadly, within 27 years of its discovery, it was hunted to extinction. Manatees are mammals and are at home in both fresh and salt water. Even though they live in the water, they don't have gills like fish. They must breathe air just like dolphins and whales and humans. Although the manatee is considered a marine mammal like whales and dolphins, their closest living relative is actually the elephant. Manatees have rough body hair that is similar in nature to that of an elephant, and if you look closely, you can even see toenails on the front flippers that resemble those found on an elephant. Another characteristic they share is prehensile lips for grasping vegetation. These slow-moving gentle giants are the only living marine mammal herbivore, eating over 60 species of aquatic plants and algae. Using only molars, manatees can eat 1/10 of their own body weight in grasses and algae in 24 hours. That's roughly 100 pounds of vegetation in a single day. An adult Florida manatee is typically up to 10 feet long and weighs in at a whopping 1,200 pounds. Some manatees have been known to grow up to 13 feet long and weigh in at up to 3,500 pounds. Manatees have very small eyes and lack of an outer ear, yet they are thought to be able to see and hear quite well. Manatees use their front flippers to crawl around on the bottom as they search for food. Their front flippers also provide them with steering as they swim. On average, manatees come up for a breath every 2 to 5 minutes, but they can stay submerged for up to 20 minutes if needed. When swimming through the water, they rarely exceed speeds of 5 miles per hour, but if they feel threatened or alarmed, they can manage short swimming bursts of up to 20 miles per hour. Being a slow-moving herbivore in Florida can be a major problem. From the earliest times of Indian habitation along Florida's coasts, manatees have been hunted for their meat. Capturing a manatee would have been fairly easy because of their lack of speed and their shallow water habitat. With the tremendous size of an adult manatee, it's no wonder that Indians, Europeans, and American settlers alike looked at the manatee as a tempting food source. We no longer allow hunting of manatees, but their problems with man have only intensified. Today, speedboats have become a major threat to manatees. Each year, more manatees die from speedboat collisions than nearly any other cause of death. By the 1970s, it was recognized that this problem was so serious that something needed to be done. In 1973, Congress passed the Endangered Species Act. This act recognized that various species of fish, wildlife, and plants in the United States had become so depleted in numbers that they were in danger of or threatened with extinction. The Endangered Species Act further recognized that these species of fish, wildlife, and plants are of aesthetic, ecological, educational, historical, recreational, and scientific value to the United States. West Indian manatees in the United States are protected under federal law by the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972, as well as the Endangered Species Act of 1973, which makes it illegal to harass, hunt, capture, or kill any marine mammal. Touching, feeding, or giving manatees water can actually be considered a form of harassment. Even more important than breaking the law is that human interaction with manatees can cause them harm. Touching manatees can alter their behavior in the wild, making them lose their natural fear of humans. West Indian manatees are also protected by the Florida Manatee Sanctuary Act of 1973. The most notable element of the Florida Manatee Sanctuary Act was the creation of manatee zones. A manatee zone is an area within a channel in the water where all boats are required to slow down. Manatee zones are established based on known migration routes and existing populations. In these zones, boat speeds are restricted. If the waterway is especially close to a shoreline, the manatee zone may also become a no-wake zone, meaning that a boat can only go a few miles per hour. Despite our best efforts, on average over 80 manatees a year die as a result of boat collisions. In order to gain a better understanding of how our state government helps injured manatees, I recently got together with John Cassady, a research associate with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
Well, John, we're at this boat. Obviously, it's really important to rescue manatees because I know that they're slow moving and they get hit by boats and things like that. How does an average citizen that's out on the water, when they see a manatee that needs to be rescued, how do they contact you and how do you get involved?
Fish and Wildlife has a alert hotline number, which is 888-404-3922. That number goes directly to our law enforcement dispatch center, and then that dispatch center will send out, actually comes through a text message through our phones, that they alert us that we have a call for the manatee. Now with the manatee section, we work a little differently than some of the other sections. We actually have a manatee biologist on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Would you say that most of your manatee rescues are related to boat strikes, or are a lot of them now also related to poor water quality, like these algae blooms we're having?
I would say that one of the leading causes of rescues of manatees is watercraft collisions. Now when we specify watercraft collisions, we kind of group that together not only with the prop cuts that people see and are very evident on manatees,
right.
most of our adult manatee population has some evidence of having crop cuts on their body.
Is that prevalent? Huh?
It's very prevalent. But we also classify that as also impact wounds. Manatees are very susceptible to the impact. It could be from a boat hull, it could be from a jet ski. Anything traveling, heavy object traveling very fast in the water that hits them can break bones and do internal damages. And we actually lose a little over 50% of the animals that die from watercraft collisions die from the impact wounds and the internal injuries and not from the propeller.
Oh, I never knew that. That's amazing. After you do the rescue with this boat, where do they go from there?
Well, we have, for rescued animals, we have 3 critical care facilities within the state of Florida. We have Miami Seaquarium, we have SeaWorld in Orlando, and we have Lowry Park Zoo in Tampa.
I take it that once you get a manatee out of the water on this boat, obviously you can't take the boat to a manatee rescue center. So, how are they transported?
We have a special transport truck that we have here, and we actually now just this year we're able to purchase a few more transport trucks, and we now have transport trucks in all of our field stations. So basically, it's a 16-foot box truck that has lift gates in the back, 3,000-pound lifts that we can lift the manatees up and get them inside. It has air conditioning in the back, has padding on the floor that we put down. Try to make it the trip as comfortable as possible. So they'll go into that truck, and that's how they'll be transported.
They'll do okay outside of the water?
Manatees do very well outside of the water. Fortunately, unlike some of the other marine mammals, like our dolphins and our whales, that has skin that has to stay wet when it comes out of the water, manatees don't have to do that. Their closest relative is the elephant, so their skin is much like an elephant's hide.
Wow.
So if it dries out, it really isn't an issue for the animal. So
I had no idea.
Yeah, some of the things that we do have to keep in mind is an animal, for instance, a tightly stranded animal that is out of the water, a manatee out in the sun, especially in the summertime when the sun's beating down, they can get sunburnt just like we can. And of course, when they're in the transport truck, we don't have to worry about that.
Sure.
But then what we're worrying about more is temperature regulation. We want to keep their body temperature regulated in a comfortable area for them. And so that we may do different things for that. If it happens to be a summertime rescue, we may be pouring water over that animal. And some people might think that we're doing that to keep their skin wet, but actually we're doing that so they can regulate their body temperature and keep them cool. If it's in the wintertime and it's very cold, we actually sometimes will wrap them in an emergency blanket and to keep them warm and hold that body temperature in. Now, in our transport truck, we do have a heating and air conditioning system in there so we can kind of regulate the temperature inside the truck. Great. One of the things that I stress a lot and do a lot with our program here is try to do a lot of outreach and public education, because all of us that are in protection of animals know that the more people know about something, the more they want to protect them. And it's surprising how little people know, even people who have been born and raised in Florida, but how little they know about manatees.
Interacting with staff at both the Manatee Center and the FWC provides an even deeper understanding of the threats facing manatees and the ways to protect them. The more you learn about the Florida manatee, the more you will realize just how special they really are. There is no specific mating season for a manatee, but when a manatee cow does get pregnant, it will take a full year for the calf to develop before it's born. Because manatees are mammals, they give birth to live babies that weigh about 60 to 70 pounds at birth. A manatee usually only gives birth to one calf, and it will nurse from its mother while it's underwater. A calf will nurse from its mother for at least 1 to 2 years. Manatees are not ready to reproduce until they are at least 5 years old. Typically, only one calf is born every 2 to 5 years. Twins are very rare. The slow reproduction rate also hinders population growth. Manatees can live for up to 60 years in the wild. Recent census numbers have our manatee population at around 5,000 animals, but that can change quickly. Record cold snaps during winter months have killed hundreds of manatees. Even though their numbers in general have been climbing, their population is highly threatened by either natural or man-made disasters. In spite of their size, manatees have relatively little body fat, and they can't handle water temperatures below 68 degrees Fahrenheit for long periods of time. Once their body temperature begins to drop, their metabolism can slow down. This can lead to digestion problems, decreased appetite, and weight loss. These events weaken their immune systems, making them vulnerable to a variety of diseases, including pneumonia. For this reason, manatees oftentimes will move towards known warm water sources during the winter months. Natural springs, shallow water sources with lots of sun, and even power plants that discharge warm water are great locations for manatees during the winter. In fact, this behavior of congregating at known warm water sources has made it relatively easy to count the manatees in our state. Aerial surveys are conducted during the winter months. By flying over these known warm water sources, spotters in small aircraft are able to make fairly accurate population counts. Today, the continued existence of the Florida manatee is directly in our hands. The Manatee Center wants to make sure that the future of the manatee will not be a sad one. We are dedicated to providing education to others about manatees, the Indian River Lagoon, and surrounding ecosystems. The center also provides helpful information on how to protect and respect the environment. Being good stewards of our environment will ensure that we can live in harmony with all of our surroundings. This will ensure the survival of the endangered manatee, as well as a wide diversity of other threatened plants and animals, including our own species, well into the future.